Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Michael and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing the Cirque du Freak the Vampire's Assistant movie. As I love the book series that it is based off of, being the saga of Darren Shan. Now this movie isn't great by any means, and like most book to movie adaptations it does fail to stick to the books. But I do love this movie, so I hope you enjoy this review. So, the plot is about two friends, Darren and Steve, who discover a flyer to a freak show and sneak out to go see it, and they are enjoying the show. That is until an orange-haired man takes center stage, which causes Steve to go white, as he recognizes the man as a vampire, which is when the police and some Karens bust the show and the boys run the separate ways. Darren ends up in Mr. Crepsley's, the vampire's room, and then steals his spider. I forgot to mention a key thing, that being Darren is obsessed with spiders, and as soon as he saw Madame Octa on stage, he fell in love with her. And Steve, well, he's obsessed with vampires, which is how he was able to recognize Larrington. As Larrington and his friend Gavner are talking, Steve bursts into the room and asks to be a vampire, which Darren witnesses this while hiding in a wardrobe. So Steve gets rejected, and then both boys leave, with Steve not knowing that Darren was watching. As Darren is leaving, he gets pulled into a car by Mr. Tiny because Mr. Crepsley figured out that his spider was stolen by Darren. And the person who's given him a lift home happens to be Mr. Tiny. The next day at school, Madame Octa gets loose and ends up biting Steve, putting him into a coma, which then brings Darren going back to the old abandoned theater to ask for Mr. Crepsley's help, which he will do on one condition, and that is Darren becoming Mr. Crepsley's assistant, and Mr. Crepsley then bloods Darren into a vampire, or half vampire, which Darren does agree, and Steve is saved. But Darren doesn't go with Mr. Crepsley right away. It takes a few days for that to happen, as well as Darren faking his death. When Larrington digs out Darren, they are attacked by a vampinese known as Murlaugh, who wants to kidnap Darren for Mr. Tiny, but Darren and Mr. Crepsley escapes and heads towards the Cirque to hide out. During this, Darren bunks with Everett the Snake Boy and becomes friends with him and the costume designer Rebecca, who is this movie's substitute for Debbie Hemlock, Darren's girlfriend in the third book. Anyway, some things happen. The vampinese attack the Cirque, which shouldn't happen until the last book, and they kidnap Rebecca, and they leave a message for Darren that it's time to come home. So Darren makes his way back home and is reunited with his family. Darren and Mr. Crepsley then fight Murlaugh and Steve, who's a vampinese now. Now, I have said that the movie doesn't really follow the books. So, let's talk about that briefly. So, for the first book, Cirque du Freak, they use almost all of it. The first hour to this movie is essentially the first book. They get the major bits down. They do change a few things, such as Steve's mom being an alcoholic in this movie, whereas in the book she actually seemed very supportive. But Steve doesn't seem to want anything to do with her. With the second book, The Vampire's Assistant, they basically didn't use any of it. They barely covered Darren refusing to drink human blood. They didn't have Sam Gress nor RV, and that's as much as I can say without going into spoilers. With the third book, and my personal favorite, Tunnels of Blood, again, everything is cut from this book except for two characters, one being Gavner, who I'll get to in a bit, and Murlaugh. They also got how the vampinese look wrong, but again, I'd say it'd be more time consuming to have to paint the actor purple for every scene that they're in. Now, this movie doesn't have the highest of review scores, with Rotten Tomatoes having it at 37% and Letterboxd having it at 2.3 out of 5 stars. But while working on this script, Darren Shan had tweeted out an old review about this movie, which he himself has said multiple times that he loves this movie, and I agree with him. But in the post, he talks about how when this movie was coming out, he would read any reviews he could find, and he said that out of those reviews that he has read, he said 1/3 were negative, saying how this movie is a cash grab because of Twilight, when it wasn't, as it was in development long before Twilight came out. Another third were mixed reviews, and the final third were positive reviews, which is interesting to know, as I know a lot of fans don't like this movie. So, why do I like this movie? Well, I love the Saga of Darren Shan book series, which I have read through at least 4 or 5 times. The most recent read-through being of last year. And when watching this movie, despite it getting a lot of stuff wrong, is amazing. To see what I have visualized in my head whilst reading through these books come to life, essentially, with how this movie portrays the Cirque, Darren, Steve, Mr. Tiny, and of course the lovable orange haired vampire, Mr. Crepsley. The casting for those characters was perfect. I love Chris Magnazola. I probably have butchered that last name. I do apologize. I love his portrayal of Darren. Seeing him go from the weak, wimpy Darren from the first two books to the Darren that I've seen from books 3 to 12, essentially. John C. Reilly was as extremely perfect cast for Laurentine Crepsley. He owned that role. Though I would have liked to have seen John C. Reilly talk the way Mr. Crepsley does in the books, but I can understand why they didn't go for that. It would probably be very hard to get into that mannerism of talking. I know it was for Laurentine in the books. I also love seeing the comedic side to Laurentine, which we didn't originally see in the books until he got his own spin-off book series, The Saga of Laurentine Crepsley. I love that it also shows scenes that we don't necessarily get to see in the books, such as how Steve handled life after Darren's fake death, which he knew about in the books, as it was actually Steve who attacked Darren after being dug up by Mr. Crepsley. And now for some negatives, unfortunately. And no, I will not be nitpicking every single thing that the books do that the movies don't, as we'll be here for hours, and I don't have the time nor patience to sit down and film that or even edit that. Anyway, here's just a few things that I personally did not like about this movie. Willem Dafoe, who played Gavner Pearl, was massively miscast, as in the books Gavner's supposed to be a big, strong, burly man, and Willem sadly isn't that. Not to mention he isn't supposed to show up until the third book, and it's only to tell Laurentine about Murlough in his hometown. Harka and the Little People were done bad. I get that their design is to show the kind of horror part, but how they were described in the books was so much better, and they also had a mask to filter out our air as it was toxic to them. Also, we don't learn Harkat's name until the fourth book. Also, Darren doesn't return home for many years till the 11th book, and the only family member he meets is his sister all grown up. Also, how Mr. Tiny makes little people was a lot more gruesome in the books than what was shown, so I guess that's a positive. But despite the few bad things that I've just mentioned, and believe me, there is more, I love this movie, and it's one of my favorite vampire films that I can stick on every now and again and have a good time watching it. The same way I enjoy rereading this book series every few years. Now, is it a movie that I can recommend to everyone? Not really. Is it a movie that I could recommend to people who love the Saga of Darren Shan book series and have never seen this movie? Abso-fucking-lutely. Is it a movie that I can re-recommend to people who have seen this movie and not liked it? Yes. Give it another shot. You are definitely missing out on an amazing movie. And can I recommend this movie to people who have not read the books and don't know anything about this series? Well, that's up to you. I hope I've managed to convince you with this review too. So, here are some of the final thoughts that I had whilst doing this review, since I haven't done that in a while. Well, I still love this movie. Even when I finally got to see it years ago, I knew I liked it, but I had to say that it was a shit movie, as that's what the fans were saying about it. But as the years have gone on, I've allowed myself to say that I love this movie, despite the fact that it doesn't stick to the books. I mean, what book to movie ever does? It's clear the actors put their all into this. Chris done amazing as Darren. I love seeing him go from the Darren from the first and second book being afraid to fully embrace his vampire side, to the Darren I know from Tunnels of Blood, all the way to the Sons of Destiny. And John C. Reilly as Mr. Crepsley, my god was he a perfect fit for this movie. He really sold me as Mr. Crepsley. I loved seeing a more comedic side to the character that we didn't get to see until the Saga of Laurentine Crepsley book series. Yeah, there's a lot of things I didn't like about this movie, but that's the same with every movie, as there's only a few movies that are really perfect. So again, should you watch this movie? If you love the Darren Shan books and haven't seen it, before, yes. If you have read the books and hate this movie, give it another go. You are missing out on a fantastic movie. And lastly, if you know nothing about the books, maybe, I don't know. That's up to you after this review. And well, there you guys go. That has been my review of Cirque du Freak, the Vampire's Assistant. I hope you enjoy. And on Friday, I will be releasing a behind the scenes video showing you the process of how I actually made this video from the start to finish. I hope you will enjoy. And once again, thank you all for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on Friday for the behind the scenes video.